Hello and welcome to this Fallout 4 build, the Vampire, which was inspired by a group of quote-unquote vampire cannibals known as the Family from Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, the Family are a group of cannibals who live in a subway and have styled themselves after vampires, controlling their hunger by drinking blood instead of eating flesh. This build is based on them, and is a blood-drinking stealth melee character who will slaughter his enemies from the shadows before descending upon anyone still standing with a flurry of sword slashes, after which he will drain them of their blood. His special stats are 3 strength, 5 perception, 8 endurance, 3 charisma, 2 intelligence, 4 agility, and 3 luck. Using the special book in Sanctuary will allow you to bring your strength up to 4, which will grant you access to the blacksmith perk for upgrading your melee weapons. The early game Perception Bobblehead will allow you to take the Night Person perk, which fits in well with the roleplaying of this build. Some other perks you'll want to take include the Cannibal perk, so you can roleplay drinking blood from corpses, Lone Wanderer to make you stronger when traveling without a companion, Sneak and Mr. Sandman for stealth and stealth kills, and Big Leagues to increase your melee damage. You'll also want to build a small settlement and attract a few settlers so you can roleplay building a coven of your fellow vampires throughout your game, as well as buy any blood packs that you find on merchants and make frequent trips to Greater Mass Blood Clinic in order to build up a nice supply of blood for yourself. Of course, if you do choose to build a settlement, you will still have to worry about growing crops to feed your settlers. However, you can always rationalize that these crops are being grown for selling or trading in return for blood. For your armor, you'll generally want to stick with lighter armor in your early game until you get access to ballistic weave so you can upgrade a surveyor outfit and use that from then on. For weapons, you'll want to use some sort of sword until you get access to the shish kebab. You won't want to use any companions as this will allow you to make use of the Lone Wanderer perk, and because the vampire is generally a loner who works best when he's on his own hunting his prey from the shadows. Your playstyle will generally revolve around sneaking your way past enemy defenses, taking out a few from stealth before charging in and slicing up anyone left, all the while tanking a fair amount of damage with your high endurance and ballistic weave armor. However, in fitting with the inspiration of this build, you should generally try to avoid killing to an extent, and instead try to sneak your way past enemies, never killing more than you need to. The backstory for the vampire goes as such. The vampire was a sickly child who spent much of his childhood in and out of hospitals. Due to this, he didn't really have a lot of social skills and had lots of trouble making friends. He grew up as an outcast and would often be made fun of and bullied at school. Eventually he was able to make friends with a small group of other outcasts, and while the bullying never really stopped, the vampire got used to it and began to accept that he would always be an outcast. When he got older, his best friend expressed an interest in joining the army. The vampire tried to talk him out of it, but his friend's mind was set, so the vampire decided to sign up as well so that he could stay with his friend and make sure that he was safe. This worked for a while, but eventually the two were separated and deployed in different areas. While serving his tour, he got word that his friend had been killed in a skirmish against Chinese forces. Deeply saddened by this, the vampire snuck out one night with the intention of deserting, as his reason for joining the military was now gone, and he blamed his commanders to some extent, as they were the ones that had split him and his friend up. However, while out under the moonlight, he came across a body partly buried in the snow. For some reason that he couldn't explain, he felt a strong urge to feast on its flesh. Before he knew what he was doing, the vampire found himself chowing down on an arm. He realized what he was doing and snapped out of his trance, disgusted by what he had just done, but even more disgusted by the fact that he had actually enjoyed the way that it had tasted. Shocked and confused, the vampire ran back to his camp, trying his best to block out the memory of what he had just done. He finished his service in the military and eventually returned home, still haunted by what he had done that night. He reconnected with his old friends and eventually would start dating and marry one of the girls in his group. They would have a kid together, and eventually he would find himself slowly forgetting what happened that night amidst the new happiness that he had found. Of course, this all ended when the bombs dropped and he was rushed into Vault 111. Shattered from the loss of his wife and kidnapping of his son, that same hunger would return to him, and he would feel compelled to feast on his fellow man. However, in this new world of monsters that he had awoken to, he would vow to restrain himself, and only drink of the blood and not of the flesh, styling himself after the vampires from monster stories long ago. While he knew that he was not actually a vampire, He would still accept the moniker of one so that he may control his hunger and accept his place as the outcast that he had always been. In his journey throughout the wastes, he would seek to find others that felt the same hunger, so that he may teach them the ways of the vampire, and provide them with the same freedom and acceptance that it had provided him. Over your game, you will want to build a settlement in a secluded place, which you can make into a home for your coven. I would recommend Croup Manor for this, as it fits in well as a vampire-themed home, and is in a fairly secluded location, where your flock can grow and live in peace. You'll also want to do your best to avoid sunlight and only go out during the night. However, as you're not actually a vampire, you will still be able to go out during the day. The faction that you'll want to side with in the main quest will be the Railroad, as the vampire will adjust well to the sense of stealth and secrecy, and also because he will feel a sense of kinship with the Simps, as he understands what it's like to be a pariah of society, and knows what it feels like to be forced to hide his true identity for fear of death. He will save Preston in Concord, however he won't ally himself with the Minutemen, as he doesn't feel like he owes anything to the settlers, who would likely try to kill him if they ever found out what he truly was. He doesn't like the Brotherhood as he feels that their stance on mutations would result in them trying to kill him and his flock, as he believes his unnatural hunger is the result of a genetic mutation, and as such this would put him at odds with them. He doesn't like the Institute for similar reasons, as he feels that they would never accept his kind, and would at best want to experiment on and dissect them to understand their condition. On the island of Far Harbor, you'll want to side with Acadia and the Children of Atom, letting the people of Far Harbor die. Once again, the vampire will feel a sense of kinship with the Sims, and while he won't follow the beliefs of the Children of Atom, he will want to allow them to practice their faith and create a home where they can be themselves away from the judgmental eyes of society. He will be okay with killing off the people of Far Harbor, as in his eyes they represent the worst that humanity has to offer. After becoming the new overboss of Nuka World, the vampire will rule the raider tribes from the shadows, as he understands that in this new world there are no good people, and that the raiders are simply doing what they have to survive, just as anyone else. Positioning himself as their leader, while still remaining hidden and leading them from behind the scenes, will allow him to become one of the most powerful people in the Commonwealth, and use them to take out anyone that would threaten him and his flock. He will favor the pack and the disciples, as he respects the loyalty of the pack and their survival of the fittest attitude, and he likes the disciples as they seem to have accepted themselves and their bloodlust as he has accepted his hunger. Plus, wherever the disciples go, there is bound to be plenty of blood, which is a nice bonus for him. He won't like the operators as he views them as greedy and simply being ruled by their desire for money. And with that, we have come to the end of this build. If you disagree with any of the choices I have made with this build, feel free to make changes within your own game, as long as you can justify it to yourself, and feel free to leave a comment letting me know what you've decided to change around, if anything. If you enjoyed or did not enjoy this build, then please leave a like or dislike respectively.